Welcome back to the show. Today I'm here with Ted Boda. Ted and I think, have been trying to coordinate this for a year, probably. Let me tell you a little bit about my friend Ted. Ted is currently product design manager on the well-being team at Instagram. He was formerly director of design at Udacity, formerly lead designer at Nest, formerly lead designer at Netflix, formerly Apple. He spent a lot of time there working on keynote experiences, iPad, iPhone, etc. He started his career at Duarte Design. He worked with Apple as well as one-on-one with Al Gore to help create slides that were the basis for what would become like a part of the Inconvenient Truth stuff, which is kind of a cool thing. Ted was last on this show back on April 10th, 2015. At least that's when we launched it. It was actually during South by Southwest of 2015. That name of that episode is called Just Show Me the Damn Thing, episode 21. So thanks, Ted, for making time to be here. It's really good to see your face again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been it was hard to coordinate, but we finally got through it.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to really do anything, especially these days. Seems like everyone is just overwhelmed with meetings and it's hard to. But thank you for making time, though. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about who you are and what you do, what drives you, and what you're up to at Instagram.
Yeah. I'm Ted. I've been actually from California, born and raised in the Bay Area, but got to live some other places in the world, kind of growing up. I studied industrial design. Didn't know what I really wanted to do before kind of like college started, but eventually kind of like found my way to an industrial design. Happened to graduate at the first .com boom bust in 2001, which was kind of a bummer. And I kind of found my way into UI design, UX design in a kind of like a weird path. So started out as kind of like a traditional graphic designer, doing a lot of like web work and Flash work. Eventually kind of like met some people. Apple was like my main client for about 3 years, and got connected to the director of iWork at the time. And we had a really good conversation. He actually asked me in general, like if I wanted to actually work on Keynote instead of doing keynotes, which I thought was really, really interesting. And found my way over to Apple and had never been a UX designer. I mean, other than kind of like doing some interaction work, like I said, for Flash and kind of like web work, it was kind of like a new journey into that path. And but it was a great time to kind of like do that, and it was a small team. I eventually became the sole designer for Keynote, and we were working on numbers, and there was another designer for pages. So really small. Apple was really small compared to what it is today. It was also a time where the iPhone and the iPad were being worked on at Apple, and so there was a lot of momentum, I think, at the company. So it wasn't just about designing Keynote on desktop, but eventually turned into thinking about like mobile at a time where the operating system didn't even exist. So we were really kind of going blue sky. But eventually that turned into a more kind of like a solidified experience. And I took that mobile experience and went over to kind of like Netflix, where I learned a lot more about kind of data and research to kind of like help inform the product. And then went from there to Nest before and kind of like after the Google acquisition. Also a great opportunity to get kind of back to my industrial design roots and mix that with UX. Had a startup for about 4 months, which failed beautifully, but it was a good thing to get out of the way. And then eventually kind of like found my way into leadership and changed to Udacity, where I was the design director there, got to grow a team, do some big work there. And now I've been at Instagram for 4+ years now, which has also been kind of like a journey and really a learning experience around kind of like design at scale and design leadership at a very large organization.
Is the Instagram team still in that really fancy building in Menlo Park that has the park on the roof?
There is an Instagram building, but no one's in there.
Oh, right. Of course.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So we actually found our way to our own building, but we're also in 3 locations now. So we have our offices in Menlo Park in San Francisco and New York, and we're distributed, a third into each of those offices.
That's cool. I got a few questions for you. I want to kind of start at the beginning before I forget. Like when you're at Apple working on iWork stuff. I mean, what's a date there? Like what year would that have been? And it would have to have been pre-iPhone because you were probably working on all the iWork stuff well in advance of the App Store, right?
Yeah. So that was 2006 to 2011. I was there. So it was definitely a time where we were working on the iPad and the iPhone in secrecy, where the iPad was kind of like housed in this really like secure kind of like frame that would have to be tethered into your computer. So very different time and for the company for sure.
One of the great things about the iWork suite was how familiar all those products were, like in terms of like the the user experience and the design system. Like how did the people that were working on these different iWork products, and maybe even having little knowledge about what was actually going to happen on the iPad, like how did you guys like manage like design systems or of work to create that level of consistency and familiarity between the suite of products?
Yeah, it was actually a super different time where, I think Apple at the time didn't have a design system per se. I think every team, within Apple, so, iMovie, the iWork team, iTunes, everyone was kind of independently doing their thing. We had like some system level OS things where, like close, minimize, hide, type of buttons on the top left, or general like inspector kind of like views, but in general everyone was kind of doing their own thing a little bit. I would say that the iWork team was in sync in a lot of ways. We had like a shared experiences, so all the drawable tools, text tools, table tools, those were all kind of like shared, and we had a designer that was working on that. I in particular focused on drawables tools, so anything that was like the multicolor gradients to Bezier tools, shapes, all of that was something kind of I owned on top of like Keynote. So again, I think it was a time where it was like very small. Mobile wasn't a thing, so we really had to worry only about desktop applications at the time. So I think it was just a lot easier. Where today, I think if you actually have a feature, you are thinking across multiple systems, not only like on desktop, but web and tablet on multiple sizes and multiple resolutions, phone, etc. So I think it was a very different time, but actually I had that opportunity to kind of like work that, even when it was just like a 1x kind of resolution that you had to worry about, and then we upped it to 2x, and then it just got more complex as time went on. But there was no central team like they have today. That is basically overseeing kind of like design system and iconography across the set of applications.
Yeah. And you spent a lot of, a lot of your career like being a designer. What was the transition into management an easy one for you? Like, did you decide that you wanted to go into management, or was it on accident? And what was that experience like from transitioning from being a designer to a manager like for you?
Yeah, I think I'd always been a little bit of a rogue kind of designer. Kind of like I always wanted to do visionary type of work and really kind of like innovate on products. I had been asked to kind of like be in more of a leadership role as I kind of like progressed through my career, especially at Nest. There was an opportunity to do that, but ultimately, I think there was just a bunch of like personal reasons that made me kind of stray away from that. I really wanted to have like work-life balance, and when I'm done with work, I'm done, so I could, spend time with my family and my wife and travel and do all those things. So I don't think at the time wanted the overhead. And then I think after the startup that I had kind of went away, I was really trying to figure out like what was next. So I was talking to a lot of people and wanted to kind of try the startup world again, and was asked to be a design director at that point. And so that was where I got my kind of like my feet wet, doing that for a year at a company called Udacity, which was a great learning experience, but I had no foundation to build that design leadership upon. So a lot of it was just guesswork and research and kind of like learning as you kind of go, which was great. But I think where I really kind of like built my foundation up, and still too, I often talk about, being a design leader at a company like Instagram or Facebook as a whole. It's really getting your PhD in design leadership at scale. There's hundreds and hundreds of designers across Facebook and over 100 at Instagram alone. And so when you do that, when we first started at Instagram, I think there were 12 designers total, which is relatively small. So over the four years, we built a lot of products along the way. Stories being the kind of like the big one when I first started there, and so I got to scale teams, move them out to different cities like New York and San Francisco, hire a lot of people, hire leadership, really participate in strategy at a new level. And so now I'm at a point where I don't think I could ever go back to IC. I really enjoy being in the leadership position at this point.
On all things considered, though, I mean, the world needs good, ICs and principal designers and managers. Like nothing really works unless it's balanced. I mean, I like talking about this stuff just because I think like, everyone has like a different perspective on, what they want to do, or how, and how they got into what they're doing, and how they grew and learn. I mean, I think for me, what happened for me was it didn't really click for me personally until I was in my 40s, and I realized, oh shit, I'm in my 40s, and I have like 20 people that are in their 20s or 30s. Like, like I should be probably fully focused on like helping them figure out how they can like, find the sexy work to work on or whatever. But design management for me, I have a passion for it, but I definitely didn't have a lot of experience with design managers in my past to like mimic, or so it's a lot of it has been like learning as I'm going along. I mean, I'm kind of curious for you. You just said that when you joined the Instagram team, the Instagram design team was 12. How large is the Instagram design team now?
So I think it's at the 115
Wow.
or so designers, and I think there were, Ian Spalter was our design director at the time, and there were 3 design managers total, and I think we're in the 18-ish range. I think from a design manager standpoint, tons of different like org changes throughout that time. A lot of hiring, ton of new product ideas. Just the process of design has kind of like changed for us a lot and gotten tighter, especially as you scale, especially as you kind of like work across 3 offices. You really need to think about communication and collaboration in a whole new way. And also the tools have changed a lot. I think when I was when I was designing in Keynote. That was kind of like my thing. So not only was working on Keynote, but I was designing in Keynote, which kind of met up. But at the time, designing in Keynote was a great way to kind of like design, prototype, and present all in the same tool. It was a tool to prototype in. You could mock things up kind of like really fast and just kind of craft that story overall. When I was at Udacity, Sketch was becoming a thing, and so we were adopting that. And now, Sketch and Figma are incredibly like popular. And then, also at Instagram, we go deep into tools, prototyping tools like Origami, which are incredibly like high fidelity nowadays. And so, I think for me, I'm also in my 40s and got a couple of kids, and now I see kind of like designers that are working around me who are just phenomenal. They're so good at what they do. They're very humble, but they're incredibly like skilled. They're not just designers. They're true product designers. They are heavily involved in strategy, which I think is something that I think a lot of designers want to be a part of, and they get to do that at a company like Facebook, which is great for them.
You'd said something earlier about I can't remember exactly what you said, but you said something that's almost like earning PhD. From an outsider's perspective, I can definitely agree with that. I think for our like Facebook is a client of ours. We've been working with Facebook for 3 years, an ongoing way, and like it's almost like the people that have done a tour of duty working on Facebook work, you can definitely see a spike in their maturity level as a contributing designer, right? It might be on a lot of different levels, but a lot of it has to do with just like working with a large group of people. The tools that I've seen in it, and I don't see the things at a level that you do, but from what I've seen, like I don't think I've ever seen such an advanced design operation from like a tooling perspective than I've seen it like in the Facebook org of tools. I just have never seen anything that advanced ever. So it's quite incredible actually.
Yeah, I think we do a good job there. I think we really, I think with a design team that scale, you can think about design systems. You can think about like tools that really kind of like help designers design faster, right? So velocity is really kind of like the key there. So helping designers and engineers work together, work faster. From prototyping, from design system libraries that you can kind of like pull in immediately, to live data fields in some of the prototyping tools. They're all incredibly like powerful. And so like even like trying to decide like, oh, are we going to use Figma or not, having a design system team that will invest in that versus like every designer building from scratch. And design systems in general are amazing to kind of like have where designers don't need to reinvent the wheel, but can pull from a library of modules and interaction patterns to basically build product faster. So, yeah.
So the next question for you, and just because there's a lot of different people that listen to this show, and then also I like to collect a lot of different opinions on this. It's different, and there's differences between agency and in-house and all the different companies. But in your own words, like in the Instagram vernacular, like what's the difference between a design director and a design manager? What does a design manager do every day? Like what are your top 3 missions? What is it that you obsess about? What is design? What is design like for a design manager?
I think there's a couple of ways to look at design management, and maybe this can happen at every company, but just kind of like reflecting on the Instagram experience, I think design management and design leadership are a couple of things. Number one, it's really about the team. So I think a good part of the work is basically building a good team, fostering culture, fostering collaboration and synergy between not only the designers on your team, but designers across the company. So I think that's first and foremost, is just focusing on the team that you have and the individuals, focusing on their kind of career paths, their career growth, really helping guide them to be the best designers that they can be. I think the other side is building good product. So really focusing on strategy, on craft, on the process of building a good product, and making sure that the designers have the resources and the feedback and the guidance that they need to make great products, and they understand the process and how to kind of like collaborate kind of like collectively with their team. So I really see it in both of those kind of like ways into how to basically focus on your team and focus on product.
How many people how many humans are you responsible for?
How many humans am I responsible for? So I have 7 designers, and I'm hiring my 8th designer right now. So pretty good good sized team, especially across so I manage the well-being design team. So it's a pretty diverse set of areas that we tend to cover.
Oh, tell me about the well-being team. What does that mean? What do you guys do?
So the well-being team really like focuses on the Instagram community. So everything related to kind of like safety, support, trust, equity type of work. So anything from authenticity on the platform, account safety, making sure that you are not locked out of your account and able to get back in. We think a lot about civic integrity, so elections 2020 work and voter empowerment. We do work around bullying or anti-bullying and making sure that we kind of like mitigate that on the platform. Right now we're focusing on social impact, things like donations. We focus a lot on privacy. We're building a new team around equity. And just like foundational kind of like work that happens across the platform as well. So it's a very purpose-driven team. The designers that I have are incredibly passionate about helping people on the platform. And so that tends to be the focus and something I've really come to enjoy. And I've managed a lot of teams during my journey at Instagram, everything from the growth team and explore team and home team and shopping team. So I've got to see a large range of work. And now this has been my latest opportunity. I think after I had my second kid, I had the decision to make which team I wanted to focus on next, and have been with this team for about 9+ months.
Oh,
so,
cool.
Yeah.
When you first came in, what was it? You said, was it 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago? You said.
It was 4 years.
When there was 3 people, did Instagram have its own like design leveling, or did Instagram use the Facebook design leveling guides and ladders?
Yes. Right. So there were 12 designers, 3 managers, and we used the same leveling guides that Facebook is using and still uses today. So what's nice about that is, an IC5 is equivalent to an M0 manager. And so the levels are the same. Being a manager isn't a promotion. You don't necessarily get more money. You don't get more stock. You're at the same level, and you can actually have the same kind of like level of impact in a lot of ways. So I think there's always, I think outside of Facebook, I think there's this kind of like, oh, well, I have to be a manager to move up in my career. And that's not the case. I think there are a lot of really amazing designers at very kind of high level, even like director level designers that don't manage people, but are at the director level and make an incredible like impact on the company, whether it be, thinking about shopping as a new product and what the vision is like, and, pitching those ideas to leadership within the company. Those are the people that are they're just phenomenal kind of like product thinkers. They happen to be designers, but they could be anything. They can, some can code, and some are musicians, some are incredible like writers, and they're the best of the best. And so I think, like I said, leadership is a path that people can choose if that's something they want to lean into, but it doesn't necessarily change anything from a kind of like a monetary kind of like standpoint.
I think that's important because when you work at a place where that is the case, then you tend to get people going in specific directions just for monetary reasons, and then you end up transitioning your best designers into like very poor managers. In scenarios like that.
Right. And there are a lot of designers that become managers and don't like it, and then they move back to IC, and I think that's great. I think that's actually that's the place you want to be, where you have that flexibility, where you can try things on and kind of like move back, because some people like to get into the details, which I think is the nice thing about being a designer, where you can focus on a specific area and go super deep on that area, working really tightly with your team and working really tightly with the different functions, especially, strong researchers and really great data scientists to kind of like to go and really kind of like think how to build the best, most impactful product possible.
I think what you just said is pretty awesome. I guess everyone sees the world differently. I think some people definitely see the world like, oh, this is my job. This is a job I'll do every day. It's kind of binary. And then there's some people that see the world like, oh, I have seasons, right? In this season, I'm into like, stakeholder alignment, or like leveraging, new technology or interaction design, and people that are like kind of get their excitement from like not having the same role all the time. The concept of someone being able to decide to go into management and explore that and then go back to IC is a really incredible thought for me. I'm curious, like for someone that would work at Facebook or Instagram that would have the indication that they could be a good manager, what kind of in that moment where they might be exploring with being a design manager, how are what is the mandate or mission that they have and the responsibilities of someone that's embarking on that transition from IC to management, and how does like a more seasoned design manager or the design management cohort determine whether this is successful or not? How do you guys do that?
I think the thing that we see from designers that want to get into management is this natural tendency to just be strong leaders. That can be, mentoring other designers, helping guide them, thinking about, design culture and really like investing in those areas, really thinking about the company as a whole and wanting to have great designers and build great designers around them. So they might get involved in recruiting and kind of like team building. And so I think that's like a first signal. I think the other part is kind of like the collaboration and communication part, where do we have designers that are great collaborators with all of the functions on their team? Are they highlighted as good communicators and somebody that can pull a team together? A lot of designers at times when other functions like a PM leaves the team, will step up towards that function and help kind of like the team move forward as well, and to not stop. And so when I think those designers that have those qualities to them, we naturally, I think as other kind of design leaders, want to have great people to partner with and to learn from. And so designers are set up, if they want to transition to those more kind of like leadership positions, it's really kind of like working with them to kind of like see if that's a good fit. Sometimes it's making them a little bit more responsible from the work that they're doing today, and to take on some of more of maybe the managerial kind of like skills without having anybody report to them immediately, and to eventually, get them a small team. And that's like for people that have that transition maybe a little bit slower versus, people that have managed before in the past and maybe have that experience, or just coming in, etc. And we have there are other functions too. I've seen like content strategists and PMs move into design as well, that had, that skill set or signals of that as well. And so, being at a company like Facebook, it's not just about, going from IC to management, but it could also be like, hey, I want to lean into kind of other functions. So there are designers that have turned into PMs. The content strategists have turned into designers. PMs that have turned into designers, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, that's cool. I said something and then I triggered Google Home. And Google Home is now going crazy. I don't know what I said. Anyway, yeah, I think about that because I think that I don't know. I guess sometimes like if, you can kind of get into a line of thinking where you get limited, right? And I've been thinking a lot lately about this kind of stuff, like PMs that potentially get into design management or designers that like you mentioned earlier, the ones that seem to have the indicators that what they're really most passionate about is not about the outcome, but like how they have this natural tendency to see how to connect the dots of the people and all that and look out for stuff. You don't necessarily need a veteran to be a design manager. You just need certain qualities of a person that understands how these things connect together. Now, I think like some of the more tough things about management, the harder conversations, you have a different sort of layers of skills to peel. But I think that I agree. Like I think that it is an interesting idea for people to be able to explore those things and move around. I don't think though that many companies really provide that level of variety, or as much, as a large organization like Facebook.
Right. I think that's the reason, when I talk about getting my PhD or just kind of like, I think continuing being able to like learn and build on your experience and build on your skill sets, really trying to like improve as a professional and even like personally, that's what, that's why I've been there so long, and I will continue kind of to stay because I keep getting those opportunities to learn and be surrounded by incredibly like smart people. And that's the bonus I think for me is to have just these really like sharp, people around me that really kind of care about the work that they're doing, and they really care about the community on Instagram as a whole. And so I think that's what's really nice, kind of like naturally being in a place like that. It's a very healthy place, which, the health of the culture of the company are really kind of like key, not having like politics kind of like surround you, having like fairness and respect from like your coworkers. I think that all like really helps benefit the experience and make you want to continue on.
What is a week in your shoes like? Like what's an average week like for you, and what are the things that keep you up at night? Like you're not like doing interaction design anymore and trying to figure out that stuff. Like what like there's got to like what are the things that are really the bigger challenges or things that are the puzzles that you're trying to figure out right now? What's it like to be you?
Well, my 1-year-old is the one that's keeping me up at night.
Oh, yeah.
So that's like one thing. I think my week's, quite busy, especially if you're recruiting. I think to hire the best people, you as a manager need to lean into finding the people yourselves, or really partnering and digging into that. So I spend a lot of time on recruiting right now, and trying to hire somebody for a new team. I spend a lot of time with my designers. We talk a lot about design in our crits and making sure that we're giving the right feedback. I also spend a lot of time with my well-being partners across the different functions, and reviewing the work across the whole organization. My schedule's pretty packed as a manager, and I think that that can be kind of like challenging and overwhelming, especially during a time of COVID where you're working from home and you're trying to like balance everything. And I've got, the kids at home and trying to like, cook and keep things kind of like going as well. And then, by the end of the day when the kids are in bed, you're just exhausted. You just want to like throw some Netflix on, of course. But yeah, I definitely keep myself busy, sometimes getting into the details are really important. So thinking about, how to improve kind of like donations, or really thinking about elections as they're kind of coming up. You don't want to glaze over things as well. I just wish I had more time. And like I said, as a manager versus a maker, I think that's more difficult. But that's actually another area that I focus on too, is just like making sure that my designers have time, and ICs have time in general. So we have time blocks set aside for the team on Wednesdays and Fridays to really have those as meeting free days, especially for ICs, so they can make, so designers and engineers and content strategists and research can really like focus on doing the work and not get overwhelmed by the meetings that are kind of like happening and are so distracting. So work-life balance is important. You want to make sure that you're not burning people out, especially during this time. And they do have time for themselves, and their own kind of like well-being really is so important to the health of the team.
Well, that's cool. I mean, it's different at every company, but it seems like you do have the ability to be involved in critiques and sessions and stuff like that. It's not just about it seems like you can get involved in the work, maybe not at the level that used to be in the past, but it seems like you can, that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all the designers on the team are incredibly autonomous. They're responsible for doing their work. They wear a lot of hats. They have an area of focus on, and they just go. And that's really great. And I think there are some kind of like companies or kind of like product areas where I think leadership really needs to kind of like pay attention a lot more than they do here. But honestly, the set of designers that I have, and just like across Instagram, are so good at what they do. They're so invested into the work. So they really do take it on and own it and care deeply about what they're working on. And that's really great too. I mean, I think you do want to hire people that are like that, and they're responsible. I think that really helps as a design leader to know that you can count on people. Everything shouldn't fall apart when the manager is gone. That's like, I think, the most important thing. If I'm away, things need to run as smoothly as they do, and they often do. Putting designers in those positions is really helpful, and I can tell my team I'm going to be off for the week, and just like hold the fort down, and they really will, and that's great.
Do you guys have tools and systems in place that have like I don't know another word to describe it, like a wiki or something that has like the RACI of like what the main focuses are for each role, so that like when you are out of town or whatever, that other people know like how to best fill in? Or do you think it's just things that people absorb and they mimic, or and they rise to the occasion?
Yeah, I think they naturally kind of like rise to the occasion. It depends on how long you're gone. So if you're gone for a week, maybe I'll just kind of like point people to, people are messaging me. We'll put like automatic like messages through email or kind of like messenger system to reach out to my manager or reach out to this designer on the team. Also, I think when a manager's gone, somebody like will kind of like raise their hand. And again, I think that's that leadership signal that we talked about before, where well, like, hey, Ted's gone, like, let me run this crit, and I'll gather notes and synthesize the kind of like feedback and make sure it's shared out. So I think there's so much redundancy there, kind of like baked into the team. It's easy, when things go wrong or like people have to leave, it's like it's there, and I think that's what I was talking about before. Is like focusing on the team and the process is really part of the story. So the system is there for things not to break apart.
Shifting gears a little bit, and excuse me, it's been some time has passed, but there was a you'll have to tell me all about it, but I'm just trying to tee this up. There was a Netflix show that had an episode about design at Instagram, and I think I saw at least a little clip where you were in this spot. Like, can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So there was an abstract series about right. Ian Spalter, who was our design director for 4 years. He's now working on product in Japan. So yeah, I had my 5-10 seconds of fame there. And everyone like reached out. I'm like, you do know the show was about somebody else for a good half hour to an hour. But yeah, it was, for me, it was just talking about Ian at the time. And, yeah, it was a definitely a fun opportunity. And it's always amazing how hours of setup and work to get turned into 5 seconds of a cameo.
I thought it was really cool. Number one, because like, oh, I saw you. I was like, I know that guy, right? Like, how often do you like watch a TV show and you see someone that was kind of cool. But also, like, I mean, at least to my knowledge, and I watch a lot of TV, but I don't think I've ever seen a TV show that breaks down what we do every day.
Right.
I think that's the only thing that I've ever seen that's like, this is what like product design means, like for people that don't do this. And I think that was, I don't know, I think that was pretty cool. I hope they do more of that kind of stuff because I don't know. I mean, our industry is new and has a lot of room to grow. It's, it's not like architecture or industrial design or whatever. It's been around for hundreds plus years, but I mean, it's an area that, people are trying to learn about it. And I think it's really, really special for people to tell those kind of stories and go in depth.
Yeah. I'm always, kind of like, it reminds me of, I don't know if you remember the IDEO, there was a episode, not on Netflix. This is pre-Netflix, but, I forget, it was some network that highlighted IDEO as a company that I think they built a shopping cart or something like that. And it really just talked about the process. This is old, but this is it was talking about the process of industrial design and how they got to the place that they did with this kind of like shopping cart. I mean, you're right, and industrial design has been around forever, but UX, it's been around, but I think to the level and the visibility that it has today is just like, it's really in the past 10, 15 years kind of like grown so immensely. And I'm glad to see that story being told in particular, because I think it's important for people that have an interest in design but don't know about it, and don't know what's possible or what they could do in their lives. And I think that's like the really exciting thing for young kind of like creative people to be able to kind of like see early on in junior high or in high school that hey, there's this, I could build the apps that I use, and that's fantastic. And I think it's really good from a standpoint where you don't need to go to the Stanfords or Harvards of the world to become a designer. You don't have to go to school. You can learn it naturally. The way we kind of like hire people, education isn't necessarily key. It certainly like helps, of course, but being able to put together a good portfolio and talk about how you kind of like solve problems and your visual kind of like skill sets are independent of the kind of like the way people need to get their kind of like careers in the past. And I think that's great.
In terms of the people that you said you spent a lot of time recruiting when you're interviewing designers, what are the top things that you look for that like are kind of a requirement for them to move on to the next step? Like, what are the key qualities that you look for?
I mean, I think there's like there are kind of like core foundational skills, of course, so are they good communicators? Would they be great at collaborating with other people on the team? Do they have the hard skills around, design and understand the tools, how to use them? Where do they kind of like stand from an interaction and visual kind of like standpoint? Can they prototype? Are they more system thinker or are they more visionary? One thing in particular that I look for is humbleness. So, for me, people with egos aren't necessarily, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I think that can like impact how they work with other people. So, like I said, people that kind of like come and really like talk about the work and solving problems, that's really key. I think those are the people that I tend to kind of like focus on. And so there's a range, and I think also for like more junior designers, you want that hint that there's this potential in people. Do they want to learn? Do they want to be investigators? How do they, how are they making their decisions? Are they open to listening to the feedback from their peers and listening to the feedback of the community that they're trying to kind of like serve? So I think that's the kind of like the way I approach it, which seems pretty standard, but that's my point of view.
What one tip would you have for people that are, in their first month of being a design manager?
Take the time to learn. I don't think anyone's expecting, or you shouldn't have all the answers. It takes time. I mean, I've been doing this for, in leadership in 5 years, and I still have so much to learn. So I think it's really just kind of like continuing to raise the bar on their own skill sets, thinking about new processes, thinking about how to make products better, thinking how to kind of like operationally make things better, where it could be, how you set up your design crits and when you do them, and how do you set your time up, and how do they invest in designers' careers, and how do they continue to inspire their designers, and think about culture and making sure that the team feels like a team. I think there's so much to kind of like learn in that first month, and often like, anybody that starts at Facebook that I talk to that are just like, hey, what do I need to know? The first thing I tell them is, you're not really gonna get things for at least 6 months to a year. So don't worry. Imposter syndrome is a real thing where people are surrounded with, by people that have been, doing that work for years, and you're just kind of like wondering, I think a lot of the times, like, am I in the right place? I don't know what I'm doing. And that is totally okay. But just knowing that it's okay, and knowing that imposter syndrome exists is really kind of like important for anybody in a new company.
That's awesome. What did you, when you were a child, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
I was a horrible student. The one good thing I was good at was drawing, was putting things together, from like making costumes or making cardboard guns with a hot glue gun and an X-Acto knife and foam core, and just spray paint, sketching. I was a hyper realistic kind of like artist, especially with I tended to use like a lot of chalk and like pencil. So I was always focused on being an illustrator. I really wanted to be a fine artist. I was a hippie, anti-tech when I was like in even in college. I don't think I really touched a computer until my wife made me buy my friend's used Mac Power PC, and I don't know if you remember those old Sony Trinitron 21-inch, 80-pound displays.
Yep.
But I was thinking about like architecture. The way I found, again, I was at a junior college. I was studying, like sculpture and ceramics and just like general art classes. I honestly had no idea what I wanted to do. And then I was visiting a school with an ex-girlfriend of mine, and she was looking at interior design, and I happened to just kind of go around the school and run into this, go into this room where everyone was making like, I think irons out of like foam and aluminum, and they were like sanding it down and painting them. There are all these like sketches on the wall. And that moment, like I just remember it clearly, just going, oh, that's it. Like, I want to be an industrial designer. There's like no argument. This is exactly what I want to do. So it really like tied, the sketching that I had done as kind of like a child, and, all of the putting together like physical objects and just being like so in love with physical objects that's where I kind of like made that decision. which was great. I just wish I would have known about it earlier, because I think I would have like started on my path a little bit earlier. But you know, that is what it is, and it's great to be here today.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I'll have to. I think we have a lot in common. We'll have to talk a little bit about after we hit stop here.
Yeah.
Ted, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to chat with me. I know it's the end of the day my time, but I know you still got work to do over in the West Coast. So we'll let you go. How can people connect with you, learn about your team and what you're doing, or just how would they say hello to you?
Yeah. I stay kind of hidden, to be honest with you. I think I have a Twitter account, but I don't go onto Twitter anymore. It's been a while. I think like LinkedIn is probably the best place to kind of like hit me up at this time. But yeah, I think I just like I'm pretty busy, but happy to kind of like chat with people if they reach out to me on LinkedIn. I think that's a good start for me.
All right, everyone connect with him on LinkedIn. Send him lots of messages. Overwhelm his activity feed and an invitation feed. Thanks, Ted. Thanks for taking time. It's really good to see you. We'll see you next time on the show.
All right. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks, Anthony.